Welcome back. This time we're talking about Magnificent Seven, a remake of the classic 1960 Western, which in turn was actually a remake of the 1954 Japanese film Seven Samurai by acclaimed director Akira Kurosawa. Now this is the latest in a long line of high-profile remakes that we've gotten so far in 2016. Unlike previous films like Ghostbusters and Ben-Hur, however, the new Magnificent Seven is actually a decent film and really a lot of fun. It's directed by Antoine Fuqua, who's given us a string of great films such as Training Day and The Equalizer, which itself was another remake, and boasts a great ensemble cast that includes people like Denzel Washington, Ethan Hawke, Vincent D'Onofrio, and of course Chris Pratt. Now I have to say, Westerns as a genre are not films that I typically gravitate to. I don't dislike them. It's not like horror films that, for the most part, I just don't enjoy. It's just a genre that I never got into as a kid, and then once I grew up, they were basically gone. It's hard to find Westerns these days, at least new ones, unless you're watching like AMC and watching classic films. And Westerns as a genre today have this kind of weird inverse situation as far as how they're released in theaters. If you do get a kind of classic action-adventure Western film, for the most part, those are released in very few theaters, get very little marketing, and pretty much disappear without making much of a ripple. Then you have the films like the Coen Brothers' remake of True Grit, as well as Quentin Tarantino's The Hateful Eight, which in any other genre would be an art house film that would get a small release and disappear without making much of a ripple until it got nominated for a bunch of Oscars. Instead, for whatever reason, those are the films that get the wide releases. And it's really that situation that this new Magnificent Seven completely defies. Because it has a wide release, a big name cast, a solid director, and after watching it, it's plain as day that this is not a film that is trying to be Best Picture, not trying to be this artistic endeavor. It is trying to be an entertaining action movie that just happens to be a Western. Because that's basically what the Westerns of old were. They were action movies. And that's where this movie succeeds really, really well. Now, of course, the elephant in the room is that this is a remake of a classic Western. The 1960 version, I know I saw as a kid, but I have very little memory of it. So I have no real emotional connection to it. And that's the problem with judging remakes. We judge them on how we personally feel about the fact that it was remade. Ghostbusters, that's a movie that I have a lot of connection to. I was not happy they remade it. Didn't help the fact that it was just not a very good remake. Ben-Hur, that's a classic film that I don't really have a lot of connection to, and wouldn't have minded if they made a decent remake. Again, that remake was terrible. But as I've said multiple times already, we have this remake of Magnificent Seven, and it's actually a very entertaining movie. So while I think some people might be offended by the fact that this movie was remade, it really didn't bother me because I had a really, really fun time with it. Now, if you haven't seen the original and you're not terribly sure what the story's about, essentially we have this small town, and it's being besieged by this kind of robber baron, gold mining tycoon, played by Peter Sarsgaard. And he's taken over this town, and he's basically slaughtering people at will, so they'll sell off their property, and he can just make even more money off his mine. And one of the people living in this town is played by Haley Bennett. Her husband is killed by this robber baron, and she goes out to try to recruit some people to try to fight against him. And she comes across this lawman, played by Denzel Washington, who has his own reasons to not like this particular robber baron. And they set out to recruit a number of people to help them fight back. And we ultimately get Seven, and that's where you get the name of the movie. And we have this very fun, action-filled movie. It's rather long. It's around 2 hours and 15 minutes. And I have to say that like the final big confrontation is probably the last 45 minutes of it. There's a lot of gunfire in this movie. A lot of people get killed. And in a lot of ways, it really does have that kind of throwback, old-school Western feel, where you have black hat villains and not necessarily white hat protagonists, but they're the good guys, regardless of what they might have done in their past. And there's no real qualms over, oh, what about violence? What should we do? Should we try to find a diplomatic way of approach? No, it's basically they're going to shoot at each other, and whoever's left standing wins. So overall, again, I had a lot of fun with this. I will say there are a couple moments, especially in the second act, where it might slow down a little bit. It never really bothered me, and there's really never a huge amount of time between one gunfight and the next. So overall, this is a lot of fun. I think it's something that will cater to people who have been looking for more of a traditional Western. It's got a great cast, fun characters, some good comic relief. It allows itself to be serious when it needs to, but it's never overly comedic. It's never overly dramatic. It just feels that nice little right middle lane where we're having fun with some good action. And this is definitely a movie I would recommend. So if you've seen the new Magnificent 7, let me know what you thought about it. How does it compare to the old one if you do have strong feelings about the 1960 version? As always, you can subscribe to my channel, check out some of my other reviews, and until next time, I'll see you at the movies.